Max Rance MacDonald. Apart from being an Irishman and entertainment entrepreneur, you have now redeployed those skills in the context of humanitarian work, and not for the first time, I might add.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Set the scene as well. Right now, you are on the Polish-Ukraine border.
That's right. Yeah. I've finally found a hotel after sleeping in the car for a couple of nights. Obviously, in that part of the country, there's not too many places to sleep, and rightfully so, because it's taken up by a lot of refugees that need it an awful lot more than I do. Trying to catch up on a lot of the messages and a lot of follow-ups with different things that we have going on the ground down here. I've been now, this is my fifth day in Poland, just sitting at home in LA and in beautiful weather and seeing everything that was going on in the news, and I just had a calling. I was lucky in that I was in this moment in time that I was able to get myself here. Everyone has a different way of contributing. People donate, people share, people shine a spotlight on what's going on and amplify it. But for me, it's my experience with these crisis situations and humanitarian work has been being boots on the ground, and knowing through the experience that I've gained in these situations and my life skills that I know once I get on the ground that I'll be able to figure something out. And I pretty promptly was connected with an awful lot of really doers out here, people that are making a lot of things happen. Got connected with them, and then just been connecting dots since then with friends in the States that are chartering 777 planes, big planes, flying in from New York with aid and supplies, and then connecting them with people on the ground and figuring out kind of corridors into the Ukraine to get those goods to the people that need the most. So I've been got involved in quite a few things on the ground here since we got here. But my first thing was to get to the border itself. In a time where unfortunately misinformation is rife and Russia spreading an awful lot of that, I needed to get down there myself and see from my own eyes first hand account of what it's looking like and the situation. And so we hit every single border crossing over 3 days to see exactly what was going on and to get a sense of the urgency, or to get a sense of things. We also hit a lot of refugee registration centers, where once they come through the border, they get brought to these massive warehouse and kind of pop-up emergency shelters while they kind of process their information and they got official refugee status, and then they move them to different cities across Europe. So it's been pretty frantic, but I have to say the response from the local Polish government, the central government, and just local Polish volunteers, normal everyday civilians, has been nothing short of exemplary. It's been really, really special to see how some of them quitting their jobs, setting up these reception villages at each border, where they have tents with food, with drinks, with baby products, with female products, with a whole bunch of different things, and they are not short on supplies. They're really doing an amazing job. Then there's World Food Kitchen, that got funded by Jeff Bezos recently, and they're putting a bunch of meals on the ground. Chef Jose was talking about like making tables longer instead of making them shorter, and using food as the center of communities. And so they're trying to get everyone fed. While I was on the ground, realized that yes, there is a need for the UNHCR and these big funds and people raising 10 million to send over to Ukraine government and to buy medical supplies. But there's also a need for like smaller pots of money to be able to help those that we're meeting every day. So we set up a GoFundMe real quick, based on experience in Nepal for the 2015 earthquake, where we raised a bunch of money. Wanted to do the exact same, so that when we meet certain people on the ground, we're able to turn around and give them the phone battery bank, or give them a bunch of food, or give them their sleeping bag if they need one. And so within 24 hours, we raised €40,000, and now have a few other friends that have flown in that are big on the social media side of things. And so with their help, we're looking to kind of to double that and be able to buy a lot of things. The things we're looking at buying is of course the essentials, the necessities, the floor mats, the sleeping bags, baby products, female products, as well as we were talking this morning about have a meeting now in a half an hour with a guy that has an army vehicle here in Poland, and buying that from him and sending it to Ukraine so they can get people and extract people from kind of occupied cities. We also have figured out, like I said, corridors, getting goods and things into the Ukraine. Have long wave radio walkie-talkies that we have a shipment of those coming in that we're going to get into the Ukraine, preempting the fall of communication systems, so that when that does happen, that they're then able to still communicate. We're looking at getting a bunch of generators for potentially when the power grid goes out, and also then we're linking up with we just did an event in Miami with Elon Musk, and he's donated a bunch of Starlink satellite systems, but for those to work, they need generators, and so we're looking to get those generators to the specific Starlink locations. So there's quite a lot happening on the ground, and it's moving at a pretty frantic pace, and as it should. The need is immediate, and the need is now, and so we're doing what we can.
It's amazing actually to dial in specifically on the technology that we might say on a normal day, oh, my battery died, first world problems. But in actual fact, like in this situation, the phone is mission critical. I noticed that you had a haul of battery packs as well from previous events.
That's right. Those were definitely not as many as I would have liked. They were what I had at arm's reach, and I had a stock in LA that I brought over with me. But yeah, now that we're on the ground, we're trying to source an awful lot more battery packs and get those because that is absolutely right. That is one thing mission critical, that it's not only to stay communicated with your people, but it's also for these refugees, for their morale, to be able to something as simple as listen to music or watch a YouTube video and take their mind away from realities.
The BBC also had a very moving piece this morning, sorry to cut across you, where there was a young gentleman and he was based in the UK, and he literally said straight out, I'm never going to see my mother again, so it would be lovely if I could speak to her just one more time. I'm choking up a bit just thinking about that. In terms of elevating that plan to get these items, to get the generators, to get the Starlink equipment, I noticed that the Ukrainian Vice PM, he tweeted at Musk and he said, hey, any chance of a bit of internet? Within 10 hours, he had a response. So within 24 hours, Elon Musk had rediverted satellites. And then it seems he had also gotten the base stations in. So in order to, I suppose, leverage your skills, your network, I guess just to bring you back a bit, how were you working last week, for example, before this crisis? You were working in the events business. You're working with some pretty big names. You mentioned Elon Musk, Oprah as well. We've seen you appear in videos with Casey Neistat and John Olsen. How did you get into that area, and how are you actively leveraging those skills and those contacts right now?
Yeah, it's I mean, during the pandemic, it's been an interesting time working in the events industry, but that's what inevitably led me to LA, and I met my girlfriend who I live with in LA over there. But it's, I guess, what the skills that I picked up from that industry that I'm using here on the ground is a lot of the people skills. It's really being able to connect the dots, and the biggest thing is problem solving. You know,
yes.
we get a phone call from someone. You know, there's big issues with, you know, a delegation that's looking to come in with a certain NGO. And they hit me up to find out, kind of to get some of the intel that I'd gotten from the ground, and okay, can we get them in onto the far side across the border to Lviv for them to see for themselves, so we can put we can apply a bit of pressure on the corporate industries for them to apply pressure on Russia.
So that's going to be very valuable to tackle the fake news issue, because if you see a face that you already know and trust on the ground and giving their eyewitness account, you really can't do better than that, can you?
100%. So before I left LA, I'd been on the Ukrainian movement and spreading what was going on, and straight away people were sending me messages being like, "Oh, that photo's from 2 years ago. That photo's from then." It's very hard. Like, it's to do your due diligence on a photo before sharing it on Instagram. It's not something that everyone has time to do. So I was like, I'm just gonna get down there. I've got a network of people that trust me, a network that has now amplified my first-hand view on what's been going on, which has been great, because then from that it's been picked up by other people that have been able to donate, that have reached out from the media world. And so I think it is very important getting your information from trusted sources, be it like small potatoes, some people on the ground, but also the bigger news agencies, whatever those news agencies might be. For me, CNN's, BBC's, Al Jazeera's, and then to not that you trust them, but then to get a look into the angle that other people are receiving their media in, looking at RT, the Russian news, state-owned news TV network, to see what is being fed into the minds of people that are completely being kind of having the cotton wool over their eyes.
And back to that issue of bringing specific people in, is it with a view towards bringing in trusted names that have large social media networks, with a view towards literally creating that trust?
Yeah, very, very much so. Some very close friends, Benny Ortega from France, Mark Deal from Egypt, and then Thomas Bragg from Sweden, who have very large social media followings and very trusted, engaged communities. They've just flown in last night, and I know that the second they hit the ground and they start sharing what they're seeing, people are going to trust what they're seeing, and then it'll amplify the seriousness and the extent of the situation with all of those. And that's it is getting a lot of coverage, Ukraine, and rightly so right now, but I feel getting it from different sources and different angles, and reaching people across socials that might necessarily look at the news, I think is hugely important.
And if we dial it back a little bit to when you and I first connected about this topic, you were literally on the way to Poland and you were looking to connect with as many people as you could in advance. And your overall mission was to see for yourself where you could most add value. So we've talked a little bit about so far the areas that you've identified. I guess right now you're actively still involved in the intelligence gathering to rather a large extent. Is there any specific target that you would like to meet or hit? Or I think you set your fundraising target initially around 50K, and you're very close to that, if maybe even in the last hour or so you've gone over that. Is there a specific milestone or set of milestones that you have in mind, or will your plan continue to iterate? And how can people keep in touch with that journey? And also, how can they donate?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, the parameters are shifting and things are moving so quickly on the ground. In my mind, there is no direct milestones. We ended up getting put in touch with the governmental agency that buys all the medical equipment and medicine for the Ukrainian government, and I got a list, I can't even tell you how long, of everything that they need, from prescription to non-prescription, from portable x-ray machines and everything in between. And it was the same question. It's like, okay, how many do you want? What are your hard numbers? And they're like, we're in a war. We just need as much as possible. And so for me, like, the aim is to raise as much as possible. Like, I wouldn't be happy if we probably don't raise €100,000 to be able to buy directly within Poland and neighboring countries and get it on the ground. Knowing what I know from the intel that we've gotten from across the border, there are definitely a lot of things that we can get with that money. And so, yeah, the best way to follow along and see what we're doing and see where that money is going, and just get an account of the refugees that are crossing over, and what that looks like. Yeah, my Instagram, live to the max, have everything on that, and then also I'm saving everything onto my highlights, so you can see everything that I've been filming up to now. But yeah, with my friends that have come in, exactly that. Bring like people coming in that have large followings. As in recent times, more and more people have stopped watching the news and that aren't connected with the reality of what's going on right now. That we're hitting other mediums to expose people to this is super important.
You've actually been living in your car as well for the last few days, which is very generous of you because you guys didn't want to be part of the problem in terms of taking up beds. What kind of advice would you have for other people that are considering deploying themselves? Should they try and tie in rather with some kind of an organization, or are there activities and tasks that people can do remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. So I probably had about 60 people reach out that said they're ready to go, their boots on the ground. But there, to be honest, there isn't a huge need for that right now within Poland. I can't speak for the neighbouring countries, but I know the majority of refugees are funneling through Poland, being an EU country. For me, I've been telling them to hold back unless they can really share that message with a lot of people online. There's a lot that they can do. Is keeping on Ukraine. It's telling everyone they know about it. Is making sure that everyone's aware. It's my sister has been hitting up like Dublin City Council and the Irish government to make sure that they're not only allowing Ukrainians in, but anyone that came from the Ukraine in as well, that might be from Africa or the Middle East. Donating to the GoFundMe will be very helpful. They can reach out to me. I do have an email address with someone that is coordinating volunteers on the ground, so I can put them in touch.
Fantastic. And just on that note, I think it's a very important point to raise. So we saw a young African Irish girl who's a medical student over in Ukraine. And there are also a lot of people from Ghana and also from Nigeria. And their parents are obviously very concerned about them because they are finding it difficult to get extracted. So I don't know what Ireland has in place, but certainly we have the macro picture as well. Of we have a lack of a capacity to house people, but there's now talk of building modular homes on state-owned land, which is something when you see the tiny home movement growing exponentially, it's hard to believe that hasn't really taken off here to date. So just to dial in on two specific questions. Firstly, what kind of capacity has Poland got right now? Or are you seeing any edge cases emerging where people can rapidly deploy emergency accommodation and maybe slightly more longer term accommodation like pods or tiny house type dwellings? And then the separate question is with regards to the African nations who have people that are trapped in the Ukraine. What kind of challenges or opportunities are you seeing to safely extract those citizens, and how could potentially Ireland or other countries help in that regard?
Yeah, to answer your first question, I've been amazed with the response and the reaction that Poland has had. I think they have a strong experience of war with what happened in World War II, so they know the feeling, and they've been taking people in left, right, and centre. I'm part of a group that like I think it's 300,000 people on Facebook. That constant 20 people every second is posting that they want to house people. They have a room. The Polish government is looking after people. My buddy that was here, that's here with me on the ground. With Adventurers for Change, he's close with the Airbnb CEO, and he was helping him come up with a plan on how to.
Actually, just to interrupt you, could I ask you about that specific question? I don't know if you're aware of this, but globally a trend has emerged whereby people are renting Airbnbs in the Ukraine for the purposes of being able to get money right in. And there's been a call to have Airbnb waive their booking fee so that 100% of that booking money ends up going directly to the people who need it. I'm sorry to divert you slightly into that very specific area, but have you got any knowledge or updates of that scheme or that initiative?
Yeah, I've seen that. It's fantastic for the Airbnb owners that live in Kiev, for example, that they're able to get some money into them. I I I heard I didn't literally just before jumping on this call, I understand that they are waiving those fees. I don't know if that's come online yet or not, but that is fantastic that they'll do that. To answer your last question, yeah, the accommodation right now, it looks like Poland actually has it covered really impressively. Now, as the war pushes west and it starts squeezing people, there will be an awful lot more refugees. It's not going to sit at 1 million people like it is right now. That number is unfortunately gonna really increase, and so there will be an awful lot more. So it won't be fair for the neighboring countries to have to really deal with that on their own. So spreading those refugees fairly and across the European Union, I think, is going to be hugely important. And Ireland knows what it's like when one nation kind of takes over and occupies another nation. So I feel it's within our blood to look after a lot of these Ukrainian people and people that were in Ukraine at the time as well.
And the African migrant issue as well. Are we doing enough to make sure that they can get repatriated safely?
Right now, as the last time I touched on that topic, my sister who'd been lobbying hadn't gotten any responses. So the short term answer is no. I know there's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done with where these people are coming from and making sure that they were in need and coming from the Ukraine, because there will be a lot of people that will take, unfortunately, advantage of the situation. But I think it's going to, the way they're doing it here is the second they cross into the border, they get a specific stamp, and that's what gives them official refugee status within Poland. And then they get access to free medical care, food, transport, and accommodation, which is great to see. Now, I'm sure Ireland is starting or has started to look into that. I know Germany is all over it already. They already have a bunch of buses coming in. You go into these refugee processing facilities, for means of a better word, and each line, I'm going to put some photos up. Each line has a placard in front of it and has the name of the cities that they're going to. Right now, predominantly within Poland, but there are quite a few German cities there as well.
Max, thanks very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and also for your efforts in general, man. It's an incredibly generous thing to take on. Just finally, just to remind us all as well, Adventurers for Change, what's the best way to connect with you or to support the project?
Right now, it's sharing some of the stories that I'm putting up, just screen grabbing them, tagging them, and putting them up, and then also donating if you can to the GoFundMe page. But otherwise, it's making sure you know what's going on. It's knowing the severity of this situation. This is a war within Europe, with a guy that we don't know how he's going to react, especially if the results he's getting aren't what he expected. And when someone has a nuclear weapon, that's a very scary thought indeed. So it's everyone being acutely aware of what's going on and making sure that they're actioning that they're going out and protesting, that they're calling their local TDs, that they're just wearing blue and yellow. So the more people out there are realizing that there's a lot of people on board with standing with Ukraine.
Max, thank you very much again, and look after yourself and your team.
I will do. Thanks a lot, Richie.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks a million.
That's it. Wow. This is the team that has been shopping all day and getting it all done. Amazing work. One of the team spent a day shopping all over Warsaw, thanks to your donations. So from the team, we just want to say thank you. Setting all this up. This is the team that's making it happen. We had a pretty large donation that just came through from an anonymous person.
No way.
But it was for 100,000 euro.
Right.
So we have now just surpassed €250,000.
Wow.
These legends have just drawn all the way from Berlin.
You got spam power, man.
We got them. Look at this.
Look at all these generators. No way. 100